All right, everybody online, let's do this. You know we're here. All right, so on the stream, you all see what everybody sees here written on the board. We have 5 weeks remaining. Keep in mind that yes, 980 is the minimum number you need to pass the course. So 980 to 1119 is a C, 1120 to 1259 is B. And if you get over 1260, it's an A. I keep getting asked, if I have over 1260 by the time the final comes, do I need to be there? The answer is no, you do not need to be there. But at least let me know you're not coming to the final and to say, Mr. Rouse, can you please double check my grade? Yes, you're allowed to do that. I'm not going to be bothered by that. I want you to tell me these things. So, let somebody turn that one off. It's on the right side. It's on the right side underneath.
Okay.
There's a button. Okay. So here are the last few weeks, everybody. Once again, I like to go over this stuff. So today, second to last chapter in Computing Essentials, chapter 12. Yes, this is the one I've delivered many times in interviews to try and get this job. So yes, I'm pretty quick with this chapter. I can get through it in 15 minutes, but I will, of course, stretch it out to probably about 30 to 40 minutes. Then, coming up on Thursday, your third access project. So your third access project, I believe we're going to be dealing with queries. And queries are, as I mentioned before, it's where we search for data and essentially create, yes, we perform searches on data. And we're going to be doing that in the third project. The third project is pretty fast. The fourth project is not. So Thursday, I'm expecting us to be done probably within an hour after we get started on that. Last few weeks of class, just for review. So after this week, we're only going to meet 6 more times. So there you go. Here's the rest of the schedule. November 19th, final chapter. Then, of course, exam 4, if you need it, it's going to be available. Again, I'm just letting you all know, if you did great on the first 3 exams and you don't want to take the 4th exam, you just click the button on the 4th exam and it will drop that score, because it does drop your low of the 4. So remember, your grade in Canvas is not accurate until you've completed all 4 exams. Then at that point, it's accurate. Just keep that in mind. So exam 4 is going to be available starting on the 19th. Then we're going to have our 4th access project on the 21st. Then we start getting into PowerPoint. Now on the 26th, notice I'm not doing lectures anymore for Computing Essentials after the 19th. So the 26th, we've got our first PowerPoint project. That is a fast one. It is a really fast one. We should be getting through that, like I said, pretty quick. Do not come to class on the 28th. I will not be here. I will be at home. Probably cooking all day again. Sorry, honey, if you're listening. I'll be cooking all day again on the 28th, most likely. She's like, come on, I help. Yes, I know you help. Okay. Anyway, I'm really happy she doesn't watch this channel, the YouTube channel. All right, week 16, lab and lab. So the long project out of the 3 is that second project, that second PowerPoint project. So on December 3rd, some of you were like, it's PowerPoint, how hard can it be? Believe me, there are going to be some challenges in these PowerPoint projects, which is good because you only get 3 of them. Then our last PowerPoint project is the 5th. So finals week, we only show up 1 time, and that's on the 10th. Your final is at 10 a.m. on the 10th. I know that's hard to remember, but yes, please try to be here by 10 o'clock in the morning. Your exam will not open until 10 o'clock in the morning. If for any reason you have to miss, I'm telling you, the people that show up, there's a benefit to showing up. You just don't know what that is yet, because I haven't given you any clues yet. But even if you're not prepared for the final, I would say my recommendation would be show up. Even if you're not ready, even if you haven't studied, because you don't know what we're going to do. So just show up. Again, if you're over 1,260 points, you are exempt from the final. And you will say, okay, Nick, I'm done with the class. Or you could just sign in from home and click the button to submit the final and take your 0 and be done. You're welcome to do that too. Well, anyway, that's it, everybody. I know people ask me, do we show up both days on finals week? No, we only show up the one day. We do not show up the other day. So you are my only class, my only in-person class that week. I am not gonna be here probably any of the other days that week. I'm only required to be here on your final, and that's it. So, yes, so that's December 10th. It does say course ends December 13th. I allow work to be submitted through December 15th. That's the Sunday night. Of course, you and I will have a nice personal discussion after your final, right here at my office, right here. As I call each and every one of you up to take a look at your score after your final has been completed. So yes, I have a spreadsheet all ready to go. I just check Canvas, I pop the number in, whatever you got, bam, gives you your exact score where you're at after the final. And of course, some of you are probably gonna be like, well, I already know I got over one. See you later, Mr. Rouse. And you just hightail it on out of here. And that's okay. That's okay with me. All right. But anyway, I have to go through these things. Yes, anything that's written on the board, I have it here on the screen for my people online. So you know that you need 980 points to pass the class. If not, you get to take it again, which, I don't like to tell people that, but I think everybody in this room right now doesn't have to take it again, so I'm not worried about that. So here are the current scores right now. With 5 weeks to go, my people that are in the 100 to 400 and 400 to 700, you are the next group of people that get a message from me, which will be happening probably within a week. The next week I will send you a reminder to get your work in. Everybody that's within the 700 to 1,000, yes, I have 6 over 1,000 right now. Thank you for doing your work. I'm not really worried about any of the other 12 people that are in the 700 to 1,000 and 1,000 to 1,300. All of them have a great shot at an A in this class. So, like I said, most people get the A in this class. If you don't do the work, you don't get the A. That's just basically how it works. I mean, unless you bomb all your exams, which I'm still trying to figure out how people do that. If I was given all the answers, shoot, I'd ace every exam. All right. I'm serious. I would ace every exam if I had all the answers. All right. Again, I don't want to know where you got your answers. Okay, so if I didn't see the tree fall in the forest or hear it, did it fall? I don't know. So, all right. So anyhow, as I said before at the top, I can deliver this chapter pretty fast. Number one, because I've been a systems analyst I was a systems analyst for almost 20 years. Yes, along being a data analyst, I did that too. And I've also had to deliver this lecture more than any other chapter that I present in this class. And you're probably like, more? Yes, because this used to be the standard interview for instructors at Phoenix College. And they would put you through this every interview you had to deliver this lecture. Of course, when I became chair, I changed all of that. So we have more interesting topics now that people have to present on. Okay, so here we go. Chapter 12. Systems analysis and design. So in this chapter, I'm going to go over a 6-step process for performing systems analysis and design. And I would actually like you all to think about what I talk about today in a few different ways. You're all like, he's going to write it over here. But then they can't. You can all see that a lot clearer than yeah, okay, I'm gonna write it right here. All right, so people online, you can't see any of this, and that's okay. This is the benefit for the people that actually decided to show up today, which I appreciate. All right, so there's 3 different ways I want you to think about everything I'm gonna run through in these 6 steps, and they're gonna go pretty fast. So the first one is, we have no system at all. When I'm talking about a system, maybe like a financial system, an HR system, some kind of computerized system. We have none. And we're going to go to a brand new system. That's the first way I want you to think about what I talk about today. The second way, we have a system. So we have a system, but we're going to upgrade it to the next version. Or we're going to change it. I mean, you could say either one. You could either say we're upgrading to the next version, or we're just going to change the system we currently have. Third, I want you to think about upgrades within our system. The book does not break this down. I do, because I've done this for a long time. So sometimes we have a system that's already in place. Now keep in mind, this is a cycle that I'm going to show you. It's a cycle. It goes on forever. Maybe we're going to make upgrades within our existing system. Like, for example, one department wants something new in the system, or something that they're like, hey, Nick, we read about this. Can we get that added to the system? Then I'd have to go chat with IT and go through this whole process that you're about to see to make that happen. And I had to do that time and time again as a systems analyst. So there are 6 phases to the systems life cycle: preliminary investigation, analysis, design, development, implementation, and maintenance. And you're going to find that I have an issue with implementation when we get to that point in phase 5. And the system itself is a collection of activities and elements organized to accomplish some kind of specific goal. And you will notice that this is a cycle. It goes on. So once we've completed the cycle, we go right back and we start investigating maybe new features in the system, like I said before, or upgrades within the system. So it's always an ongoing cycle. Here's what it looks like in a tabular summary. I'm not going to bore you to tears. I just have that in there because I have to. All right, let's just get into it. So step 1, or phase 1, is the preliminary investigation. You'll notice in this phase, there are 3 different parts. There's the problem. Let me put that in quotes. I'm going to put that in quotes because it's not always a problem. Maybe it's something that we really just, kind of want to have. Like, it's a nice to have feature, but it's not really a problem. I'm going back to this. I'm going back to the 3rd one, upgrades within the system. So maybe it's not necessarily a problem, but right now we have to identify, why do we need this system? Why do we need it? That's the problem you're identifying. Usually management is involved in this, not analysts. Analysts come in later. So upper management has to review all these different alternatives that are out there for a system. Now, I've been involved in going from a text-based system to a graphical user interface system. Yes, same system. Looks entirely different to everybody. People really freaked out when that stuff started happening. I've gone through many upgrades within financial systems, but again, the analyst does not decide which alternative is the best for a new system. Usually upper management has to pick that. So they go through the alternatives, and then a report is written at the end. Then we go to a systems analysis phase. Yes, that was pretty quick, I know. But here's where I'm going to spend the bulk of my time in this cycle, is on the the systems analysis phase. So in this phase, the analysts have to go and gather the data. And what I mean by gathering the data is, I actually used to sit down at people's desks for 8 hours in a day and write everything that they would do in their job. Yes, I've been in grungy receiving offices where everything's dirty. I've been in executives' offices. I've been all over the place. I'm going to tell you, the data gathering piece stinks. Like, it's awful. So you have to gather all that data as an analyst, because then you have to analyze that dang data, and then at the end you're writing a report. Now there are different ways that we can analyze that data. So in chapter 12 and chapter 13, by the way, chapter 12 and chapter 13 are going to look extremely similar to you all, like extremely similar. There's cycles in both of them. Yes, there's top-down, you're going to hear this word, top-down analysis is in both of them. So I want you to think about this. We have a system, and we use the top-down analysis method to break down top-level components. So what that means is, I'm going to use our financial system as an example. In our financial system, we have a bunch of responsibilities. Each person has a responsibility. So what we do with that responsibility is we break it down. We break it down into all the tasks within that responsibility for easier analysis. Because then you can go into every task and figure out, okay, what's supposed to happen if the user does whatever. And of course, during this time, I would actually ask people, as we're documenting all this, to try and cause errors. Try and cause as many errors as you can. Because we didn't really know what was going to happen, what people actually do. Because people can make mistakes all the time. They really do. They really can make mistakes. So we actually wanted people to do that during this. So we could see where those were so that they could be fixed somehow. But there are many different tools for analysis. I'm not going to bore you to tears with all this. I'm just going to tell you that there are several. I'm going to start going through this. Oh, one of the quiz answers for today is computer-aided software engineering tools. So just keep in mind that those are out there to help make analysis easier because it's automated and it's electronic as opposed to writing everything by hand. What does this look like? You've used this program before. Looks like what? Yes, I heard it. Yes, Excel is, yes, spreadsheet is correct. So we can use something called a grid chart. So what we would do, where I worked, is we would have massively long Excel spreadsheets with this same kind of thing, where we have all the different inputs that have to happen and the expected outputs that have to happen as a result of those inputs. So these spreadsheets, I tell you, everybody, if you had like legal size paper, that's the 8.5 by 14, you still couldn't fit it on there because we had so many columns going across. Yeah, you'd have to shrink it all down to like 6-point font to get it all to fit on one page. Everybody's like, I can't read this. I'm like, I can. Well, you're young. I'm like, yeah, I know, but you had to fit it all on one page. So I said, well, then if there's some stuff you don't want, then let's hide the columns. It's pretty easy. But anyhow, that's what those are. They show the relationship between the inputs and the outputs. Now in chapter 13, you're going to see a real flow chart. I say a real one because there's a start and an end. If you notice here in a systems flow chart, there is no start and an end. There's inputs, there's processes, there's storage, there's documents. But you notice there's no like oval at the top that says start, and there's not one at the bottom that says end. These are just what system flow charts look like within an organization. We also have DFDs, or data flow diagrams. I like these better. I hope you do too. I like these better than what you just saw because you can actually like read this. You can actually read what's happening. Instead of this, where you're like, what the heck is this? So I love data flow diagrams because you can actually read those, you can actually understand them. So it shows different processes, and you can see what all this does. So I'm not going to bore you to tears with that. Moving on. So keep in mind, phase 2 takes quite a long time. It really does. Hopefully, I'm hoping that if you ever have to deal with this, you're dealing with this, where you have a system and they're upgrading it to the next version. Because if you don't have a system, you're literally going to have to manually go through everything and like gather all that data. That's going to take a long, long time if you don't have like a team of dedicated people to do it. Luckily, I was smart as an analyst, and I got somebody from every one of our campuses to be a part of that team so I wouldn't have to do all the work myself. And then I started figuring out other people I could bring in so that that's even less work I would have to do. So there's a lot of work at the beginning, but then as the data gathering piece came along, each one of us had our own set of data that we had to go get. And yes, we had to do that manually. We all had to do that manually and then put it all into a system. That was not pretty. All right, so let's get back to what we were talking about at the beginning, and that is taking a look at the alternatives. So I like to put the word best, select the best system up here in quotes. So we've gone through our alternatives for the systems. We pick the best one, and then we write a report. So what makes it the best system? So there are 3 types of feasibilities that all systems should be evaluated on. Number 1, can we afford it? That's economic. If we can't afford the system, well, we're not getting that one. So we can take that off the list of alternatives. And this is how we narrow down that list of alternative systems. Secondly, do we have the people on site, or do we have the people in our organization that can maintain the system? Yes, over time. Do we have the technical feasibility? That also includes, do we have the employees that can actually like use this system? Like, can they use it effectively? That's part of technical also. Here's this word operational. One of the students that's not in this classroom right now that stuck around last time to ask me what does operational mean kind of talked about this in chapter 10. Operational is the day-to-day, yes, the day-to-day activities within the organization. So what I define this as personally is, with operational feasibility, are the people that are going to use this system going to like it on a day-to-day basis? Meaning, are they going to buy into what you're trying to give them? Because if I'm an employee and I don't like the system and I have a chance to speak up about it, guess what? I'm going to speak up about it. But if you have buy-in from the majority of your users, you're going to look real good. I'm just telling you. That was the secret to my success as an analyst, was I got enough people to go, hey, I can actually use this. Because they'd complain during the data gathering piece. And then when they actually saw previews of the system, and they're like, that's really cool. Okay, we can use this. And they went from being angry to being happy. And I'm like, well, if the angry people are happy, then I guess the happy people should be even happier. I assumed that. And that worked. That philosophy worked, by the way. Bless you. So, I mentioned this in the first chapter in this class. We always acquire the software before we acquire the hardware, because the software is going to tell us, the organization, what kind of hardware we need to install the software on. Now, I know some of you are like, this is assuming that we're going to have all this at our organization, that we're not just going to use the cloud, like some cloud system where we don't have to deal with any of this. Aha! I had to throw that wrench in there. So, yes, if we are going to have it at our organization, we're going to need to acquire the software first, then acquire the hardware. And then last but not least in this step, test. Oh, and that should be bold. That should be in 40-point font. Test the system. As I said earlier, my number one goal as an analyst was to have people break the system purposely. Break it. Cause any possible error you can cause. So we would document every possible error. Because some people in the system, I kid you not, were making the same mistake over and over and over, 800 and something times somebody made a mistake. I'm like, this is the weirdest report I remember. I was the database guy, right? So I could figure all this stuff out. My boss would always go, hey, can you print that and just take it over to the person so they can make the 800 corrections? I'm like, you serious? He's like, yeah, I'm serious. Print it out. And you have to give them the news. I'm like, but you're the boss. They're going to hate me. So I bring over this big stack of paper, and I'm like, thump. Hi, this is for you. I'm like, this is your username, right? I made that many mistakes. You know how long this is going to take to fix? Quite some time. So my goal was, when we would go to a new system, to make sure that that person couldn't make that mistake ever again. So yes, and there were multiple instances where this happened. So with the new system, that was my number one thing was, let's try to get that fixed. So good news is, everybody, there are these things called patches that get applied to software, which I think I'll talk about next. I'm talking about that in chapter 13. Patches are great. Because yes, you can apply the patch, then you test it to see if it actually worked, and if it works, fantastic. But in the testing phase, seriously, this is where I would actually bring in, because they wanted me to coordinate this for some reason, all the most powerful users, the people that use it all the time, to start testing the system. Now I would ask every one of the people that were testing it to bring their own data, so that I wouldn't have to come up with all the different scenarios. I wanted them to come up with them, which was smart thinking, because then I didn't have to do that. So I had enough stuff to do. So testing it is very, very important, extremely important. Now, once we've tested the system to the point, now maybe it's not perfect, but there are no issues that are stopping people from using the system. We call those show-stopping issues. There's no show-stopping issues, so we can move on to the next phase, which is implementation. Now, here's my issue with the implementation phase. I think the two boxes, the top and the bottom, should be flipped, because after we've tested the system, before the system goes live, you should probably be training people on how to use it. I know, that's a weird thought, but this is, like I said, this is the issue I have here. Trained should be on the top, conversion should be on the bottom, because if your people aren't trained to use the system, are they going to be happy? Probably not. I'll give you a fantastic example, and you know I have one. And this is me as a faculty member speaking, not as a data analyst speaking. So we have our student information system. I'm sure you've all heard of the student information system. You know, the one where all of our stuff is, where our finances are, where our grades are. As students, we go and check that. All right, I'm gonna put my student hat on. So, you're gonna love this one. And this is, I'm using the direct, I'm gonna give you the direct type of conversion example here. We're done with the semester, it's winter, we're students, we're all done, we go home for the break, or whatever we do, we go to work or whatever, and we're off. Then we come back in the spring. So, they had one student information system when we left, and without any emails, nothing. I checked all my emails, I checked everything. They never sent us a thing on this. They completely changed the system. Bam, we come back. All my favorites are gone. All my shortcuts are gone. Everything is gone. And I let out this shriek from my office. My boss comes running down the hall. This is me as a faculty member. And she goes, "Nick, that was you?" "Yes," I screamed. "Have you gone into the student information system this morning?" "No." I'm like, "Please go in there. I will go to your office to watch this." I'm like, "Go to your favorites." She's like, "I had 50 favorites in there." I'm like, "They're all gone." She goes, "So we have to go back and figure out how to get to all these things again?" I'm like, "You're the best at raising a stink about things on this campus. I'll let you, I'll have sick you on the problem." And she sure did. They ended up reverting the system back. We got all of our favorites back again. And they said, "We will make sure that we train people appropriately next time before we decide to do this." So, I'm telling you, you should always have people trained first on what the changes are coming up, instead of blindsiding them. That's called a direct conversion. That is not recommended. In all my years as a data analyst and systems analyst, we use parallel, which means we would run the old system and the new system side by side until everybody embraced the new system, and then we got rid of the old system. Because people would always ask, "Well, Nick, where was that in the old system? Nick, where was this in the old system? Nick, where was this in the..." And eventually I trained people to stop asking me that question. That's part of the training, is to stop asking Nick that question. So that's what parallel systems do. All right, now I always get confused about pilot versus phased, but if you think about these words, because this is going to be one of the questions on the quiz that I'm probably going to get wrong for the first time in a long time, because I forgot which answer it is. Yeah, some of my brain cells escape at some point, and the fresh ones come in and they don't have that information in there anymore. Anyway, so to me, as a data analyst, the pilot way of doing it would be, okay, we're gonna pick certain people. We're gonna pick certain people and we're gonna roll it out to them first. And if they enjoy using it and they like it, then we'll roll it out to the rest of the organization. Phased, on the other hand, is where we phase groups of users in. So it's more like staggered. Instead of you pick the pilot people and then bam, the rest of the organization uses it. Phase is where we have one group use it first, another group uses it next, another group uses it next, until everybody's using it. So if I get this wrong on the quiz, it's probably because of the way the question's worded, and it's gonna be weird, I promise, I have not fixed it. Okay, moving on. So those are your four types of conversion. Then when we're finally here at systems maintenance, so keep in mind that systems maintenance goes on literally forever. So what I would do is, from time to time, my boss would always go, "Hey, can you go spot check something to see if it still works? Or something we haven't used in a while, can you go see if it still works?" So I'd go through and I'd run every report that's in the system that you could run, make sure that all the output is correct. So I'd go through that evaluation. Then I'd go through various tasks that maybe people don't do, because I could figure out who was using, which parts of the system. Because remember the database access, I had all that access. So I could determine what was being used, when, and how often. So we actually got it to the point where we would have to go test the things that weren't being regularly used. Like somebody might use that task once a month, twice a month, but they don't use it the rest of the month. So how do we know if it's even working if people aren't telling us? Or I would have to check in with our main users over a period of time and just talk to them for like 15 minutes over the phone. I would document it. I'm like, okay, I've spoken with every campus. They all love it. What do you mean they all love it? Like, they all love it. Nick, you can't tell me there's no problems. Oh, there are problems, but they love it. Here's all the documentation. I'm not reading all that. Yeah, I know you're not. That's why he had to resign. Okay, moving on. Oh yeah, so when we went from that system that was text-based to the system that was graphical user interface-based, my number one worry was, because this is a thing where they left for winter break, this is a winter break thing again, they changed the system over the break, and then the first day we came in, January, I think it was like January 4th or whatever we had to come in, I stared at my phone that whole morning. I'm like, come on, ring. Come on, ring. Come on, something's got to be wrong, right? Something's got to go wrong, right? That phone never rang, like all morning. So I decided to walk around the building to see if people were actually using the system. I go at random people's offices and go, good morning. I love this system. I'm like, what? I'm like, okay. Go to the next department. Nick, the system's great. I'm like, okay. So I start going to like different floors of the building to go see other people. I'm like, you don't have one complaint? So I took my 3-hour lunch that day, and after I got back from the 3-hour lunch, I sat there and I'm like, there's no voicemail, no email, nothing. I'm like, now what? So you think back to the systems maintenance phase, remember this is a cycle. This is a cycle. So we go back to preliminary investigation again, because now that the system works great, everybody wants upgrades within the system. So it's possible, I want you to just think about this for a moment, it's possible as an analyst for you to be in multiple different phases depending on what upgrade you're making to the system. Maybe the upgrade has been made and now we have to train a certain set of users on that change. Or maybe we're going back to review, or maybe we're gathering data for something as an analyst. Maybe we're in that phase with something else. So I would have a list of projects that I would always be constantly working on and where we were at with each project. I actually had one project take 3.5 years to complete. It was for one upgrade. No, it wasn't a full upgrade to the system. It was one thing that they wanted, and that was the ability to purge data from the system safely, purge it safely. So it took 3.5 years, and the problem wasn't me. The problem was our management. They kept changing the scope of the project. Now, if your company can't do this in-house, you're going to do something called, you're going to get a prototype of the system, which companies can try the prototype out for a certain amount of time. And if they like it, great, they buy it. And if they don't, they don't. Oh yeah, so here's one of your quiz answers for today. It's what we used to say back in the 1980s a lot. And that's RAD. So rapid applications development has been around for quite some time. It is very costly though, and that's because there's a very short development time. So organizations that don't have the time to do the testing, don't have the time to go through the cycle, they're going to purchase something that has been built using rapid applications development. And they also have access to highly trained personnel who can train them, the company, on how to use the system. So that's being employed a lot more now as well. Now, the four-letter word I really don't want to talk about is consultants. That makes me sick to my stomach just thinking about that. But consultants are also, yeah, who do you think they replaced me with? $250,000 a year consultant. I was making 40 grand a year. Okay. That's why I got out of that job. Okay, that's why I came here. I got tired of that stuff. So anyway, I was tired of showing people their contracts when they would walk through my door too. I'm like, oh, hey, you're so-and-so. I'm like, hey, I got your contract right here. You make how much? You want me to do what? I'm like, no, you can find it yourself. Then my boss would come into my office and shut the door. And why do you keep telling the consultants they can go find it themselves? I'm like, would you like to see how much they're making? I know how much you make. Here's how much you make. He's like, okay, Nick, that doesn't mean, yeah. If they're so smart, then they should be able to figure this out themselves, right? Or pay me a little bit more money, that would help. Anyway, median salary for a systems analyst these days is $103,800. And the thing is the funny thing is, when people would ask me, how did you get into that? I'm just gonna tell you this. I didn't have any proper training of the system. Remember when I said about databases? I would go into every table and try to find what's in the tables of data. I did the same thing with the financial system. I would go through every single screen, every single field, and figure out what it did. And I would study that stuff. It was great being single at the time too, I'm just gonna tell you. That's a great job when you're single, because you could spend the whole day at the office and it didn't matter. I had nobody to go home to. So I would eat breakfast, lunch, dinner, sometimes midnight dinner, sometimes 2 a.m. snack, get pizza delivered down at the bottom floor of the building, and then I gotta take it all the way up to, yeah, sometimes I'd go for a run around the building, because we had one of those cube farm places where they had a track around it. Not like a running track, I turned it into a running track, just for the record. But anyhow, yeah. All right, anyway, last slide, they're gonna talk about consulting. Ugh. But yes, companies don't really have time anymore to develop systems, so they go with rapid applications development and prototyping and those types of things. All right, told you this was gonna be a fast one. Everybody online, hope you enjoyed your 40 minutes with me. People in the classroom are going to enjoy a little bit more time with me. But hey, glad you tuned in again. Thank you all for the 1,000+ views now on the channel. Greatly appreciate it. We will see you on Thursday.